Thank you for taking the time out, because I think today will be for you. Managing stress and burnout is such an important topic. And I am going to share some of my own experience. Now, I've been working for the last 11 years for myself. I am an executive coach. I coach project managers and leaders, and I run leadership training as well. But before that, I actually was working as a very hardworking project manager myself, and I almost faced burnout. So I know how it is. I know what it feels like. And I think I know that it's not worth paying the price when we get so far that we actually face a burnout. So that's the purpose of today's presentation, to get you to think and to get you to value your own time and efforts. And let me, with that, share my screen.
Yeah, we can see.
Yeah. Let's first define what stress is, because as I will come to explain to you today, there are different types of stress. There is something really which is positive stress, because we do need some stress to perform. And there certainly also is negative stress. There is short-term stress and there is long-term stress. And the way I define negative stress, and that's really, of course, what we're here to try to avoid, is a situation where somebody demands something of you, a situation demands something of you, and you feel that you cannot cope with that demand. So it's too much. If I ask you to do an assignment for me, and you feel, yeah, I want to do that, excellent, I'm up for this. Well, then you could say that it's a positive stress, because you really feel engaged and positive by it, and you feel that you can actually cope with that. That is still stress, and it's still pressure, and we need that. But the negative stress, if I do that for too long to you and it's too much, that's when you can go into this fight, flight, or freeze response, because you go into your body freezes up. So imagine you've been away on holiday, you come back to your desk, you log on Monday morning, and you find hundreds of emails, and 50 or 100 of them are high priority, and they require a response from you right now. So you go into a stress situation, and you're either gonna really trying to fight the situation, like you're gonna do what you can to work with this very rapidly. Your heart rate may go up, etc. Maybe you're gonna run away from the situation. You put your head in the sand and you try to avoid all these emails, or perhaps you completely freeze. You just don't know what to do. That can happen if we get too overwhelmed. So it's the negative stress that we're going to focus on in today's webinar, because the positive stress, of course, we welcome that. That's what makes you thrive and develop and grow. And this curve illustrates that quite well, I think. You see here that as the pressure or stress mounts on you, your performance changes. So right on the left-hand side, if there is very, very little pressure on you, well, you're bored. Nobody wants you. Nobody needs you. There are no projects to manage. And we might even call that rust out. You're just not developing your skills, and you can actually lose your confidence from that. So you see, as the pressure begins to rise, great. You feel motivated. You get into your zone of peak performance. Fantastic. But then as we move further, we get into the yellow areas, we get into the orange areas, because now there's too much pressure. And many project managers I coach, they find themselves in these yellow, orange, and even the red areas. It goes from bad to worse, really. And that's what we're trying to avoid. We want to stay on the top of the curve, ideally. And burnout is a real issue. I'm sharing here some of the statistics with you from Gallup and also from Deloitte. Gallup is saying that 44% feel burned out sometimes, but 23% feels burned out all the time. Those are not healthy statistics, and burnout is on the rise. Another statistic for you here is that some people say, and I think this quote here is from Bruce Lipton. He wrote the book, The Biology of Belief. He says that up to 95% of disease may be stress-related. So it is really worth paying attention to. When you are stressed in the short term, it means that something happens, like you have all these many emails you need to address on the Monday morning after you have been on holiday. If you go into this fight or flight response, what happens is that your attention goes in your brain. It moves from the frontal part of your brain towards the back of your brain, towards it. In the middle, there's something called the amygdala. And that's where your fight or flight or freeze response sits. That's your emotional brain. And when your attention moves to that middle part of the brain, we call it the limbic system, then actually you have less attention in the prefrontal cortex, which is where your logic sits. So in actual terms, it means that your IQ drops when you are very stressed. You can't think as expansively. You can't think your most creative and best problem-solving thoughts. So short-term stress isn't great for your ability to think clearly. Long-term stress is a different matter, because long-term stress has a severe impact on your body. You know, your body just begins slowly to break down if this long-term stress persists. Your immune system is suppressed, and that is because the more energy you use to fight in your project environment, the less energy your body has available to repair itself internally, including the immune system. You know, you only have so much resource in your body. So you decide where you want to allocate it. Now, stress, as I said, is not the problem. It's the long-term stress that's really the issue. And I want to make that really clear. The first stage of stress, okay, you have a problem on your project. You have a deadline on your project. It requires you to work extra hard for a short amount of time. You go into alarm stage, okay, you work with it, you're running quicker than normal, your body adapts, you have increased heart rate, you know, all the things that happen physiologically in your body so that you can meet this very stressful period of your life. But it's okay because you have a project deadline. So the stress hormones, cortisol and adrenaline, are circulating in your body. It's okay. You are built for that. We are built for these peak moments of stress. If after your deadline, you go on the beach, you relax for a week, you take a holiday, you play, you have fun, you see your friends, you laugh, fine. Because then what happens is your body has time to recover. But many people in the modern world don't do that. After a stressful period, they do not take time to recover, to relax, to play. So we get to the second stage. The body goes into more like a permanent fighting mode. We call it resistance. The body tries the best it can to keep up with this demand of your ongoing project, your ongoing deadlines, your daily grind of being logged onto your phone during all of your waking hours. So if this continues for a longer period of time, you begin to notice perhaps some mood changes. Maybe you get irritable, you get frustrated, you begin to feel different aches and pains in your body. At this point, you may begin to notice it. And this is what I did in my own job. I noticed that I had aches and pains. I didn't sleep very well. My body was inflamed. Various things happened in my body years ago when I was running a very demanding project here in London. And I actually took time out. Between two projects, I actually went on I think it took 6 weeks off, and I toured around India. And my body was able to recover. I came back fully recharged, and just, I was walking on clouds. So again, if you take a break after stage 2 here, if you take a longer break, you will still be okay. But some people still ignore the warning signs of this stage 2. They continue year in, year out. We work hard. We continue to not give ourselves the rest that we really need. So we get into exhaustion or burnout. And this is chronic stress. This is the real issue. The real issue is the chronic stress, not the short-term stress. Now we're exhausted. We you know, we have all these different symptoms in our body. And I have coached several people who have reached real burnout. I have coached several people who are trying to come back to work after burnout. Now, you don't want to get to that stage because some people never really recover. They will never get back to where they were before. Their threshold is just much, much lower for managing any kind of stress. So you do not, under any circumstances, want to approach stage 3. But many people do. I see it, unfortunately. I would like all of you to take a piece of paper and draw yourself with this little person. Because we're going to look at how you respond to stress. You need to understand your own patterns. So take a piece of paper, draw yourself. If you are driving, do not do this, obviously. Okay. First, I would like you to think about a situation that was stressful to you. A recent situation, perhaps within the last couple of weeks. And I would like you to pick a situation where you definitely know you were stressed. Like on a scale from 1 to 10, you don't want the situation that was 2 or 3 because that doesn't sound too stressful. So maybe something that really made you sit up and you felt your body responding with some kind of stress response. Right. Hopefully you have that situation in mind right now. I would like you to think about how you were feeling that very moment. And perhaps write that down. So were you feeling angry? Were you feeling afraid that something might happen? Because fear is a big part of our stress response. Or what were you feeling? What were the emotions that you experienced? Just take a moment to write that down. And in conjunction with that, what were you actually thinking? So what were the thoughts that were going through your mind? You see, the way that you feel is dependent or determined by what you think. So if you're thinking, oh gosh, I can't cope, you're going to feel stressed out. You're going to feel stressed out. If you're thinking, I can't do this, or I don't know how to do this, or I'm going to be found out, or I don't have enough time, or all these thoughts obviously can lead to you feeling anxious or fearful. So it's important for you to identify what were you thinking in that moment. Also identify what did you actually say and what did you do? What did you actually say and do in this stressful situation? And finally, what were your physical symptoms? So what did you notice in your body? And here you can use the person you have drawn to actually indicate where in your body did you feel something. Did you have a headache? Then draw that. Or did you feel your heart race? Maybe draw that. Or see if you can connect with your body and draw on this piece of paper what your physical symptoms were. We all respond differently to stress. Try to decode what your own response looks like. And also, did you go into the situation wanting to fight, or did you actually, perhaps you tried to avoid the situation, perhaps you were trying to run away from it. And one last question here. What advice would you give to yourself? Looking at what you've written down. If you were if you were your own coach, what would you say to yourself that perhaps could help you to deal with this situation differently? And I'm not following the chat right now, but you're welcome to share with each other in the chat. I asked you on this previous slide what your physical symptoms were. There are a whole host of warning signs that we can feel. They are different for each individual person. And you see here, there are some cognitive symptoms, there are emotional symptoms, there are physical symptoms and behavioral symptoms. One person will not feel all of these, hopefully not, but you might recognize some of these. So if you recognize any of these, maybe write them down as well. Maybe take a screenshot of this page. My message here is to you, don't ignore your warning signs. I coach people who say, oh yeah, I have a headache often, but it's normal. Or I don't sleep very well, but it's okay. I get colds all the time, but that's normal. These things are not necessarily normal. So don't ignore your warning signs. Your body is trying to communicate to you. So don't abandon yourself in that way. Try to listen to what your body needs. And maybe we can also use this analogy of a stress bucket. The red bucket here is your ability to contain stress, to cope with stress. And the more water you pour into the bucket, the more likely it is to overflow. So all the stresses in your life, whether they are personal or professional, if you're worried about losing your job, if you are worried that you're not going to have a new project to go to, if you've lost somebody you loved in your private life, it could be all sorts of situations that add to this stress bucket. If you're not careful, if you don't have enough coping strategies, your bucket is going to flow over, right? And you're going to get all these symptoms and all these issues and burnout coming along. So it's really coping strategies. Okay, if we can stop adding all this water into the bucket, that would help. If you can turn down the flow. At the same time, we need to have really good coping strategies because we live in a modern world. We have stressful jobs. We have exciting projects we want to deliver. We do have deadlines. So I'm not here to tell you to not do good work. I'm not here to tell you to clock hours and go home every day at 6 p.m. I'm here to tell you to notice yourself, have a balance. If you work hard, make sure you also relax hard and have good coping strategies. And we'll talk about the coping strategies. First, I want to share with you Peter's story. Peter was somebody I was training during a leadership program some years ago. And his story really struck with me. So Peter was working at the time on a big rail project. And he said that he used to suffer with a lot of stress. There was a program he was running. He was working every single weekend. He was working for 10 months, very late, and they were short-staffed. So he himself was putting in a lot of effort. Unfortunately, after 10 months, he collapsed at work. He was rushed to hospital. And when the doctors examined him, they found that he had a condition where fluid was accumulating around his heart. And he was told that if he didn't change his behavior, he could pass away, he could die from this. And they said this is stress related. So this was a major wake-up call for Peter and for his employer. And he attended some stress management courses, and he began to make dramatic changes to his project and to the way that he worked. He paid much more time to his friends, to his family. He began to pay more attention to his hobbies. And he created a divide, and I recommend everybody does this. He created like a divide between work and life. So Peter would actually drive to work. He worked in construction, after all, in the rail industry, so he didn't have too much online work. So when he drove home after having managed his projects, when he got to the last set of traffic lights before his home, he decided that's where work ends and home life begins. So we all need some kind of divide in our mind where we leave work behind. If you're working from home, I work from home, I have a home office. It's more challenging, but you need some kind of ritual to say, okay, I leave work behind now and I go into my private life. So Peter had that divide. He also left his laptop in the boot of his car, and he told his team that he was not using his emails between 7 p.m. and 7 a.m. So he was clearly signaling, and he was the most senior person. He was a program manager. He was clearly signaling, I'm not working between 7 p.m. and 7 a.m. and I want you to not work either. And what's so wonderful is that when I spoke to Peter, when I met him, it was 12 years since his breakdown. And he said to me, you know what, today I manage programs that are much bigger, much more complex, but I do not get stressed because I've learned to not think about work when I'm not working. I sleep really well during night because I've learned about these stress coping techniques. So my message here is, it is possible to work as an ambitious project manager. It is possible, as long as you learn to have moments where you disconnect, moments where you can recover and rejuvenate yourself. Don't be a slave to your phone and your email 24/7. It is not healthy. I want to share a second story with you. This is from a lady called Julie. And I coached Julie very recently. She came to me for stress management coaching. And Julie had a client. And she said to me, I feel really, really exhausted. And I asked her, what are you most exhausted about? What is it that makes you exhausted? And she said, it's the client. My client constantly makes changes to the project. And I do my best to plan the project, to agree who does what. It's all set out. It's such tight deadlines. And then in the last minute, my client will make changes. And it really stresses me out, and it is exhausting. And I said to her, okay, let's go into it. Let's allow you to feel these emotions. Because when we feel our emotions, when we feel the stress, instead of pushing it aside or intellectualizing it, we can actually make sure the stress moves through our body. So I asked Julie, okay, how did you feel when the client comes and makes changes in the last moment? How does it make you feel? And she says, it makes me feel angry, really, really angry. I said, okay, where do you feel this anger in your body? And she goes, in my hands and in my throat. I said, very good, very good. Stay with that anger. And can you describe it to me? What does it look like? What do you have a color? Do you have a texture? And he said, yes, it's like red hot lava. It's like red hot lava from a volcano inside my body. I said, great. Let's go into that red hot lava. Stay with it. Allow it to be there. Breathe into it. Feel it. And we sat like this for some minutes. And then she said to me, oh, now it's changing. Now I'm not angry anymore, but I feel really disappointed in myself. I feel disappointed that I didn't do more to change the situation, to work with the client, to speak up against the client. And I said to her, okay, where do you feel that disappointment? In your body, where do you feel it? And she thought for a moment and she said, oh, I feel it in my head. I said, okay, great. Can you visualize that disappointment? What does it look like in your body? She said, it's in my head. It's like a gray fog. It's like a curtain inside my head. I said, okay, let's stay with it. Very good. Allow that disappointment to be there. Just stay with that foggy curtain in your head. And she sat there for some minutes, really feeling it. And then she said, now it's changing again. Now I'm becoming really sad. I'm becoming really sad that I allowed all of this to affect me so much. It's just work. Look at all the stress I've been under. And I'm so sad that I allowed this situation to affect me so much. So the reason why I share the story with you is because when you are able to stay with your emotions, to really feel these painful emotions that are connected with stress, what happens is that it moves through your body. Emotions don't stay for that long. Even if you feel so angry, you don't have to shout. You don't have to bang your fist in the table. Just you privately feeling your emotions and allowing them for yourself can mean that they move through your body. You do not want these emotions to stay in your body. That's when they can create all these kinds of physical symptoms and aches and pains, as we saw on the slide previously. And again, I encourage you to share what you're experiencing as we're going through this webinar. You can share it in the chat. I will go back and have a look at the chat a little later on. Now, what is it that leads us to all the stress? What is really going on? One pattern that I observe a lot is that most project managers really want to be the hero. I mean, don't we all want to be the hero at some stage? And what do I mean by hero? And how is it connected to stress? Well, the way I see the superhero project manager is somebody who wants to know all the answers, somebody who wants to work hard, somebody who wants to move the project forward quickly, to be in control, to not ask for help, to not show vulnerability. Because we can do it all, can't we? We would like to think that we can do it all. But this pattern of being the superhero, I think, really leads to stress and burnout. It is a good thing that you want to work hard. That's okay. It is a good thing that you want to be in control of your project to a certain extent, but don't overdo it. Do not overdo it. Everything in moderation. You need to look after your own health in the process. And everything I'm saying on this webinar also applies to your team. If you are a project manager or any kind of manager or a program manager, you are not just responsible for your own health. You are also responsible for helping your team members to avoid burnout. That is such an important part. I must remember to say that. If you play the hero, if you work day and night, what example are you setting for your team members? Do you also expect them to check their emails 24/7? So it's this culture, I think, that we need to change if we want people to be happier and healthier on our projects. And when we are less stressed, we actually think better, as I shared before. We can actually go into high performance in teams when we are not the superhero. So when we're less stressed, the project will benefit in all kinds of ways. Now, I also want to share some other personality patterns that really, I think, lead to stress and burnout. These are kind of psychological patterns. And you might recognize yourself in some of these patterns. Perfectionist. If you want to be the perfectionist, well, we can just see how that can lead to burnout, because you have to work harder to make sure that everything is perfect. Wanting to be in control, wanting to be a high achiever, or the person who always wants to help out. You feel maybe bad if you don't help out. These patterns, if you recognize yourself in some of them, and probably many of us do, becoming aware is the first step in changing it. Because when you are aware, little by little, this does take time, little by little, you can begin to change your patterns. Being a little bit of a perfectionist sometimes is positive, but you don't want to be a perfectionist all the time, only when it matters. And something else that I see quite a lot is people with low self-esteem. people who feel that they're somehow not good enough at what they do. And when you feel that you're not good enough, or you have a lack of self-belief, many people will overwork themselves to compensate. And that is a real problem, because we think that we become better. We think we become more lovable. We think we become more accepted when we work ourselves to death. So again, if you recognize yourself in this pattern, you want to work perhaps with a therapist or a coach to help boost your self-belief, your self-love, actually, because you don't have to work hard to be accepted. That's really, I think, a fundamental message here. There are also thinking errors that lead to stress. As I said before, it's really your patterns of thinking that lead to your stressful emotions. So I must get this done today, or I should really be able to figure this out, or I can't possibly stand up and speak to my team. If you're thinking like this, of course, it's going to cause you stress. Or if you're thinking, again, back to the pattern of being perfectionist, it has to be 100% perfect. That's a troublesome thought to have. Or if you are attaching negative labels to yourself, I'm inexperienced, I'm not good enough, I'm too old for this, I'm too young for this, I don't fit in, whatever labels we are telling ourselves, or the stories we're telling ourselves, becoming aware of your thoughts can help you to not believe in your thoughts. It's true. Just because you have a thought that you are inexperienced, it doesn't mean that you have to believe that thought. Magic. So become aware of your thoughts is a lifelong journey. It's not easy, but we have to start somewhere. Or catastrophic thinking is a problem. If you think things are, oh my God, it's terrible. It's terrible. Well, then your stress response will be so much higher if that's your level of thinking. Now, I want to spend some time talking about what your coping strategies can be. And before I begin to share some of the coping strategies that have worked for me and many other people, I want you to have a think for yourself. Because my experience is that most people know what works for them. So that's my question right now. Do you know what works for you? Write it down, share it in the chat box. What are your own personal stress coping techniques? Please share it in your chat box, because you probably know what you need to do. You know your own medicine, but are you taking your own medicine? That's perhaps the question. So let me share a few things that I have seen work for people. And one of the most fundamental ones is to set boundaries. If you have no boundaries, you're going to work day and night, and that's obviously not healthy. So you need to know what you will and what you will not accept. You need to understand at what time you're going to log off in the evening. Yes, there are exceptions. There are moments with short-term stress. Perfect, that's normal, but it shouldn't be the exception. It should not be the norm. So yeah, you see the prompts here on the screen. What are your boundaries? What agreements can you make with yourself? Do you always eat lunch in front of the desk whilst reading emails? Or do you sometimes take out just a few minutes to be with yourself? It is really about working smarter and not harder. And good project management requires us to plan properly. If you already create a project plan that is unrealistic, a project plan that requires your team to work weekends, or a project plan without any buffer, well, you're really setting yourself and your team up for failure. So use all the best, all the good practices in project management. Create realistic plans, do your risk management properly, create good scope statements, all of these practices that we know help us. Don't multitask, learn to delegate. And if you have no one to delegate to, then train somebody. Ask for help. You don't have to do it all on your own. You don't have to be the superhero. And I think there's a lot to say for changing the culture as well. Because in some workplaces or in some parts of the world, working hard is the norm. And we expect our employees to work weekends or to work late. And I think it's everybody's responsibility to begin to change the culture if we want to stay healthy and avoid burnout. So how can we change the culture? As project managers and leaders, you certainly have a big role to play, beginning to show vulnerability and talking about how we feel is actually a big step. If you can say to your team, you know what, this weekend I'm not logging on, or this evening, or I don't log on after 7 or 8 p.m., you are sending a strong message that it's acceptable. You can begin to change the culture. Or if you say, you know, I feel really stressed right now and I feel angry about this and this has happened, or whatever you feel, you're making it okay to share how we feel. It doesn't mean that that we're becoming victims. It doesn't mean that we have to sit and discuss for a week how we feel. It just means that when people can express how they feel, actually that in itself is a stress reducing method, because we want to share. When we share, it's like we can let it go. So we have to care about each other's well-being if we want to change the culture. And I know a while ago I talked in London about this topic, and somebody raised their hand and said, yeah, you know, on our project we have a team huddle. You know, we huddle every Friday, we huddle, and we've started calling it a team cuddle. Good British word, to cuddle each other, because they take the chance to just let all of their stresses go and just share it, and then they walk off into the weekend. Now, physical change is a major stress coping technique, and you all know this. You all know that if you move your bodies, you feel better. And we can actually say that if you want to change your psychology, you have to change your physiology. So some people say that it is impossible to be depressed if you are actually moving your body. So get up, move, go for a walk, change your posture from sitting hunched over your desk to actually sitting up, breathing properly. I mean, there's a whole science in breath work. And I'm very pleased to announce that I'm actually publishing a new book. It will be released in spring 24. And a lot of it is actually coming out as focusing on how we can address stress, and breathing properly. Having certain breath techniques or meditation techniques is also part of what I share in that book, along with how we can change our thoughts, how we can feel our emotions, like the story of Julie I was sharing a moment ago. Yeah, I think perhaps you all agree with what's on the slide here. The question is, are you doing it? Are you getting enough sleep? Are you eating healthily? All of this helps your body to cope better with your demanding jobs. And there are so many apps out there as well. There are meditation apps, apps that will help you to fall asleep, apps that will help you hypnotize yourself, and make use of them, because the more you can get your body into a relaxed state, the quicker you can recover and rejuvenate. As I said earlier on, the more stressed you are, the more relaxation time you need to compensate. And I'm just going to take out a few short minutes to guide you. And unless you are driving, if you're sitting down, then please close your eyes. Take this moment to take a deep breath in and just let it go. And relax your body, close your eyes, and use your imagination. I would like to ask you to think about a place right now. A place where you can feel totally relaxed and totally absorbed. A place where you just feel really safe and really at ease. It could be that you're snuggled up on the sofa in the evening. It could be that you have your favorite music playing. It could be that you're going for a walk in the countryside. It could be that you're on the beach. It could be that you're playing a favorite sport. What's important is that it's a place where you feel totally safe and totally at ease. So choose this place now in your imagination and spend some time there. I would like you to go to that place and have a look around. Are you indoors or are you outdoors, perhaps? What do you see? Is it sunshine or is it evening? Is anyone with you or are you on your own? What's the weather like? What colors can you see? What sounds can you hear? Perhaps you can even smell something. And now notice how you're feeling in your body. Really tune into how it feels to be in this really safe and beautiful place. This place where you feel totally relaxed. Now, as we're beginning to leave this place, I want you to know that you can always come back to this beautiful place in your imagination. You can always go and visit this place where you feel totally safe and at ease, and a place where you can feel rejuvenated. So if you haven't already, you can open your eyes again. We didn't spend too much time here, but I'm hoping that it illustrated to you that within a very short amount of time, you can use your imagination to let go of your stresses and really go somewhere beautiful in your mind. And the last thing that I'm going to ask you in today's webinar is that you agree with yourself what you're going to stop and start doing. I would like you to walk away today with some actions. So you can answer these questions and please write down your answers. I could ease the impact of stress in my life if I were to stop ... What do you need to stop doing? And also, what do you need to start doing? I can ease the impact of stress in my life if I were to start ... And the last question, I will know that I'm managing my stress levels better when I ... So yeah, what is it you need to do to know that you're managing your stress levels better? These questions may take you a little while to ponder, so I suggest you take a picture of this slide and really think about these questions in your own time. Because with this, we are about to wrap up the webinar, and we will have questions in a moment. I would like to encourage you to connect with me on LinkedIn, or to check out my website, susannemadsen.co.uk, or susannemadsen.com, same thing. And I have lots of videos on YouTube about this. My book, The Power Project Leadership, can be bought on Amazon. And then there's a picture here of the book I'm publishing in the coming spring 24, How to Do the Inner Work. And with that, I look forward to your questions.
Thank you. Wonderful. Thank you, Suzanne. I think you made the people really not only stress-free, I would say it was more of a kind of introspection that people sometimes forget to do, especially when the last slide, it was very powerful. It was really powerful. And I think that is a very important self-help. The professionals need to know and realize that we are professionals. We are not supermens or superwomens, and we don't need to. Okay. In fact, rather, just before coming to this webinar, I spoke something of the line to somebody who asked me something about that, why you really want to do this, how you find yourself quite professional and confident that you can achieve this. I told I don't. And I'm quite comfortable that I might not be 100% of the thing what you're asking for, and because I'm a human first, and I cannot do everything what you expect in your mind, because those things will only come with the point of time of experience and the environment. So I think it's very important that we stay touch with ourselves and then to the outside world first. So quite well said. I think we have a lot of questions here, which I am just trying to see that people started posting. Once you stop speaking, then people get a time, oh wow, we need to start asking questions as well. So let me start with few. While in my mind, let me start with the first one, is that you've spoken about mental strength, or would you like to mention anything about mental strength? Because we talked about stress, we talked about anxiety, we talked about the things which brings all these kind of negative emotions to us. So to handle these things, of course, one important thing is mental strength. How would you advise someone to turn their negatives into positives? Of course, the last slide is the one is a kind of indicator that what you can do to that. Because the Mr. Tamir is asking that he has one colleague, and I think he's not changing the way his ways, and he's always stressed out, and then he's not taking the advices that how he can turn his negative into positives. So I think it's a low on the self-belief could be, or the mental strength is quite down. Any advice in such a situation for the people like us who have the people like this around us as well sometimes?
I think all of the things I said in the webinar, really, first of all, we each person has to want to change. We can't change people. We can point them in the right direction, but it's up to people themselves. Even some people I coach, they hear what I'm saying, but they're not taking action because they haven't decided to do so. So I think a very powerful question we can ask people is, do you want to make a change?
Wow.
And if they say yes, then we go, okay, let's look at what we can do. I'm as your manager, I want to help you, but let's look at one or two things you can do. And then, as I said, the way we're thinking about it, maybe we can ask then, what's the most stressful thing that is happening for you at the moment? And help talk through it with them. And I think when we're trying to help somebody else, we want to solve the problem, we want to give advice. And as you said, they're not listening to the advice. But in coaching, which is my profession, we're trying to make the other person think for themselves. Because if I say, go and do exercise, well, maybe they don't know. They don't get to do it. So it's much more powerful if I ask them, do you want to make a change? Yes. Okay. What's one step you can do? What small step you can do today? Let's just focus on today. Well, I can go for a 10-minute walk around the block. Fantastic. I'll see you in 10 minutes. Let them suggest what they can do, because I believe we have the answers inside of us.
Wow. So that differs, that how the coach and how the friends think of the same problem two different ways. So thank you so much for that, the piece of experience what you just suggested there. It was really nice there. Do you really have any idea or any answer to this one? Any recovery period in general if the person goes through a burnout? Is there any really a pattern in terms that how much of the recovery time the normal human being takes after a burnout?
I don't know, but we're talking months. I think some people, there's degrees of burnout. I know many people who have been signed off work with stress, and 6 months later, they are still not back 100%. So they might have 3 months completely off, and then they might go back 1 day a week, and then they might go back 2 days a week, and stay like that until they have more energy. It's very individual, but we are talking months, and it's just not a place people want to go to. I strongly recommend that people listen to their bodies and don't rush coming back, because you can't. It takes a long time.
Okay. So that's what the answer is about recovery period. Lucy, I think she has or he has, in fact, I'm not quite sure, but yeah, pardon for that. One thing what the person is asking here is that the astonishing fact what you mentioned, when the people go through these negative emotions, it really takes a time for them to come back and bounce back after being impacted and affected by this, and it impacts their performance at the work also. So in the workplace setting, normally what is the right way that how can this can be coped and improved is what the question is from Lucy.
I'm not sure exactly. Let me read it again. Is it Lucy Ellis?
Yeah, correct.
They may never be able to come back to the previous level. I don't know what to answer. If they can't come back to the previous level, I don't know. They have to find something that they can come back to. I think there is no other way, because we're not magicians. And that's why I am so keen on telling people about the risks of burnout, because we may not be able to come back. Some people change careers, and so it's
basically it's a contextual, but yeah, it could be tricky. Okay, another question from Jose. How do you motivate yourself when you like your job and you're committed to your projects, but you feel that the stakeholders or the management or whomsoever you're working for is not paying enough attention and basically removing the rug from beneath your feet? That's what the ideology he has given. How would you motivate yourself in such situation? Because you are indirectly in a hate zone somehow, indirectly, but you have to keep yourself chin up and then really drop the thing still, because you like a job, you're doing what you're looking for.
Well, I would, I don't know Joe's inside. So I would speak to Joe's, and I would say, what was it that motivated you about your project in the first place? Why do you get up in the morning? Why do you do what you do? And I would try to reignite that flame that was originally there. Is it about the project? Does the project have purpose? Think about when the project has been delivered, all the value is going to add to somebody. Is that what is motivating you? Do you have an impact on the team? Can you make a difference to the team? I had a job once where I felt, actually, I just want the team to feel that they are lucky to work with me, because I actually wanted to help bring the team forward. So is it about your impact on the team that's motivating you? Or is it about the skills you're learning? So you need to go right back and look at all the benefits and feel into what are the benefits for you? And then I think try to magnify them. So it's remembering. I think it's going, don't let the client spoil it for you. Don't let the stakeholder spoil it for you. Remember what is in it for you.
Good. Very good advice there. Isaac has one question. Please provide some specific strategy or techniques or any practices which we as a project managers can employ to promote healthy work environment and ensure the well-being of our team members.
So healthy work environment, I think it might be stuff like doing things together, taking time. Listen, I don't know the different environments. I don't know if we're talking online or if we're talking in person. Is it possible to have lunch together once in a while? Is it possible to get together face to face and actually have a bit of fun, actually do something? It can still be project related, but actually have some fun with it. I think that's a healthy work environment. You know, we always want people to innovate and to come up with problem solving. It's a work thing. But the more creative they are, the more we play and have fun, the more we can actually think creatively. So maybe create a workshop setting with post-it notes and where we share ideas and we brainstorm, we have a fun, maybe we have a lunch at the same time. It just do something that kind of indicates that we don't have to be slaves that just sit in front of our desk and have to work. We can also, work can also be play, work can also be fun. Sometimes we generate even better ideas in that way. And something that I advocate a lot, I haven't talked about it today because today was not about team performance, but is to work with a team charter. And you can download a team charter template from my website. This is not a project charter. It's a team charter where you sit and you have a workshop with your team and we discuss, how do we want to work together? How are we going to celebrate successes? What values are important to us? And one of the things you can discuss in the team charter is how do we relate to stress? How do we create a healthy work-life environment, a healthy culture? So that's probably my top tip, actually. Take time out to work and discuss behaviors with a team charter as a support document.
Yeah. One last question I would like to mention from the audience here is that Joyce is asking that what I observed many a times is that apart from trying to be a perfectionist, what I've seen the people do work or do more time at work, thinking that if I don't do this, someone else will take my work or project. How such situation can be addressed in workplaces?
Well, that's a good question. It's a serious question. I would first say, is it true? Is it true that if you don't work so hard, that somebody else will take over? It sounds to me like an irrational fear. Mm-hmm. If you don't do your job, if you go home at 4 p.m., that's a problem. So first of all, is it an irrational fear, or is somebody standing there ready to take your job? And then maybe have a conversation with your manager about it, because it doesn't sound like a healthy way to work. That I'm afraid that somebody's there ready to take over. Maybe there's another problem then. Are people already questioning my skills? How can I strengthen my skills so that I know that I'm adding value and I don't have to work 12-hour days in order to prove it?
Okay, great. I think one last question from my side would be that we are in that age where we are talking about all new different industrial revolutions, and this age and that age with the latest advent of everybody talking about new age technologies and new fads around technologies, and want to prove themselves to be super cool in all the aspects of the life in that way. The fear of missing out, the social medias, and then the ideas of being portrayed as to be as livable as possible, as visible as possible sometimes create that irrational, not fear, I would not say even stress at times, but the right word for that would be, is that really having that negative cumulative impact incrementally, which is degrading into the minds of individuals being professionals in this age while we are working? Is it being same in the past? In your experience, what is your studies telling you about this? Especially about the time we are in at the moment within.
So that was a long question. Could you simplify it?
Being in the today's situations as compared to the past, do you feel any kind of differences in your studies or research that today's modern world requires us to be very different in the form of social medias, and being into the self-image projections is also a factor in fear and stress for us?
Absolutely. I mean, we're living in a world with increased complexity, increased pressure. We always have these things close by. There is more competition. There are more stakeholders. We work remotely. We work across time zones. You just add to it, add to it, add to it, and all of this creates stress because we always wired up, and it creates fear and anxiety because, you know, is somebody else going to take my job? Am I good enough? It's just the whole thing. But it's a paradox, because the more we try to run and catch up, and the more we try to be plugged in, and the more we try to communicate, and the more we try to be everything to everybody, we might be getting just going further and further down. So I recently listened to a very well-known author who's written best-selling books. And he said that every single year he takes between 30 and 60 days on a retreat. And you're thinking, from somebody who publishes all these bestsellers, and doing all the research it does, how can he take 30 to 60 days out every single year to deplug? And he said, if I do not unplug, so during this period, he doesn't read books. He doesn't read books. He doesn't take answers. He doesn't get any new information. He says, otherwise, he doesn't get the perspective. Now, I know that people listening on this call, they can't take out all that amount of time because they're employed and they're running projects. But it just goes to show that with all the stuff that's happening, like you're saying in your answer, in your question there, we do need to unplug to keep our sanity.
Okay, great. Yeah, I think that's what makes us a bit of powerful and as well as vulnerable together as a human being. We are both, and both the sides of the things are in a personality existing with us. There is a couple of more questions, but we have a time running short of now. So I'm being requested by Aisha to take this particular question. Otherwise, it's not good. So just take the last one here. Context is around that the session is the need of the hour. C-level executives think when they pressurize us with the things, saying like, this need to be done now with urgency and you cannot go home, something like that, because of urgency. They think that the output will be perfect, but they don't realize that how much stress it is building us within to get this done. So the question is that how to tackle such last minute long hour works.
You know what, this is a very, very difficult one, because I work with some large organizations as an external coach and trainer. And this is what happens. So the company has these demanding deadlines and is coming right from up there. And the team actually doesn't have much choice. And I think this is about changing the culture, and it's about changing the culture little by little and through dialogue. One thing I can say, if we always just work harder and work harder, management will keep giving us more projects quicker. That's a given. So we have to create this dialogue and say, okay, we can, as a team, we understand we can do so much. We cannot do that. We can work this much. We cannot work every weekend. We cannot physically, we're not robots. So I think it's about creating a realistic dialogue and saying what we can do and what we can't do.
Yeah, I think that's very good advice. That's the only thing, setting your boundaries as an individual or as a team. I think that is where we need to speak to a point that how we can limit ourselves to these constraints slowly. But yeah, thank you so much, Suzanne. I think you did a wonderful job to answer the difficult questions. These are not a tangible questions that yes and no. I know that is difficult ones to answer at times contextually, but you did a really great job. Thank you so much for giving us a time and then spending this useful information. I think we are closing the webinar for tonight, and for all the friends in the marketing team who are being responsible for marketing and the posting all the information with us in the social media, a big round of applause for them. Also, I would not say good night without saying the rest of the PMI UAE chapter volunteers. who have been helping us in these webinars as well. And this includes our colleagues from outreach, volunteering, finance, and governance as well. So we are here again up to the closure, and until the next webinar now, together with my colleagues, Amir, and the event team, is Anchal here, wishing you a very pleasant evening ahead, and God bless for your participation. We'll see you in the next webinar. Thank you, Suzanne, for your participation, and good night to you as well.
Good night, everyone, and thank you to everyone who contributed in the chat.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye. Good night, guys. Take care.